Love it when the music stops, the song stops right when it's time for class to start. Good afternoon, Riverland College, and good afternoon, Long Prairie Gray Eagle High School. It is October 5th already. Time is just on the march. And, it's like my friend Billy Collins, the American poet, says, 1 hour just sweeps into the next. 40 seconds in and I haven't said a word. I'm kind of, I'm not trying to be a YouTuber. I'm just trying to be an English teacher and trying to keep doing my job. And I've remarked already that I know it's not the most interesting thing to just have just one shot, me sitting and talking in front of all my books to prove that I'm smart, or smarter than the average bear. But I won't be able to mix in, different scenes today. I had this real hope that I could do a vid outside because it's really warm today. The sun is shining on my township, and I hope it's shining where you are in Long Prairie and down there in Austin. But it's super windy, so if I went to the little stream that I'm gonna go to sometime this week to film a little vid for you, if I did that today, you would just hear nothing but wind noise in my Sennheiser lavalier wireless microphone. So just endure me today, just kind of sitting and talking. I got a poem queued up here for you, and I want to get you thinking about an essay, because next week is MEA time, right? And MEA weekend's a good time to take an essay. You get a little time to catch your breath, and maybe if I have that due in about 12 days, a week from this Friday, maybe that would be, I don't think, an onerous thing. But got a little bit of talking to do about essays and a poem, and a couple preliminary observations first. I was moving through your journals yesterday, and for some reason I skipped ahead and read the most recent entry before I had to hit a pause on it, because it takes a while to read them, and I'm reading every word. I hope you can tell that. And I just simply want to report that yesterday I have a habit. When a student tells me something sad, and sometimes they do, it's not that I'm asking for it, but my whole life I've just been a person that people would tell things to. It's my story. And when a student tells me something sad, my habit is to, especially during the pandemic, is I go outside and I pray. I do. I'm a man of prayer and of faith. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. And I go outside and I pray underneath the sky. Well, you guys, there were like 4 or 5 straight journal entries yesterday where I had to do that. I had to, leave my little thing, my little response, and then go out and, lift up my hands and lift up my student. I pray for my students every single day, past, present, and future. And I just simply wanted you to know that. One of you told me that you've been exposed to COVID. Of course, I won't say who. So I'm crossing my fingers and praying about that. And one of you told me that you did have COVID, that you've been diagnosed, that you got a sore throat. And of course, I won't say the name of that young man or woman, but again, I was out on the porch. And I think there's like 6 that I didn't read yet, and I got to get back to that after I get this video done and upload it over at St. John's. And I blame Valerie for not getting done, okay? Because when I got to her journal entry, it was all about her little boy, Pete. This is a mom with a little boy she loves well. And when she told me that Pete, 6-year-old Pete, wanted a dinosaur-themed birthday party, I just dropped everything. And I had to make a film for Pete, like a little 3-minute just iPhone shot film for Pete. And I haven't uploaded that yet, but I will. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, he's behind on student writing? He's behind on everything. Grant writing, poet hosting. How can he just stop and make one film for a child? Well, you know what? I can. I don't have any supervision right now at all. The state of Minnesota doesn't have the faintest idea what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. And if I want to make a dinosaur film for a little boy, well, I'm going to do it. And now, when I went back and actually read the whole entry, I heard all about Pete putting his arm through a window. He got cut up, man. He had to go to the emergency room. And now I got to make another video for Pete to tell him that I'm really sorry that his arm got hurt. And so, that's what I'm up to. One other thing, a message that I had for all my students today. Please don't go hungry in the pandemic. I know a number of you are PSEO students, and it's a mistake if I assume that you've got enough food at your house. Having enough to eat, do I have enough to eat, has become a central question in the pandemic. I don't know that much about Riverland yet, but I know it's a state college, and I know with the firepower of Minnesota State behind it, 37 colleges, man, greatest job of my life. I know that there's resources down there. I'm just certain that there's a food bank at that college, and there's ways to get food. Please don't go hungry. Now, at Central Lakes College, we're really ramping it up this year, possibly with CARES Act funding. I observed today an email from Jesse Perrine, our marketing person, who let me know that I should let my students know, because they don't check their email, do you? That it's at Central Lakes anyway, students can order up a meal every single day, 5 days a week. And I looked at the menu. It's like beef stroganoff, baked chicken, real food. And today I made all of my students, all day long in my Zoom classes, my 9, my 10, and my classical mythology class, I said, give me a thumbs up if you promise me you won't go hungry. I had to make my 23-year-old make the same promise when he moved out 2 weeks ago. And that was so heartbreaking to me to bid him farewell. But I couldn't even talk about it with you or any of my other students. And I'm getting over the sting of it now, kind of. But he's 23. He's making only 25 grand teaching at this little Catholic school in Litchfield. And it's like, I told him, do not go hungry. If you find yourself running out of noodles ramen because you spent all your money on your beautiful girlfriend, just circle back here and I'll loan you money at this point. He's got to learn how to handle his money, but please don't go hungry. 7 minutes in, I'm not going to be self-conscious about that. I'm holding a book of poetry by my friend Mark Conway. It's called Rivers of the Driftless Region. And here you can see his head. He, former director of the Literary Arts Institute. This is his 3rd or 4th book of poetry, and he's the real deal. And I'm writing this in honor of my Riverland students, because I don't know if any of you know this phrase. I only learned it when I went to this book reading in a Minneapolis bookstore a couple years ago. The driftless region refers to a geographic region in southeastern Minnesota, southwestern Wisconsin, and northeast Iowa, down where you guys are from. And Austin is just inside the driftless region. And it's just simply a different place than where I live. It looks beautiful down there. It really does. I had this idea that it was just flat corn and soybeans, but wow, there's some terrain down there. The difference between this region and your region, Riverlanders, is that the glaciers went through here relatively recently in terms of geologic time, about 20,000 years ago. And holy cow, did they make this place beautiful. The glaciers never got to the driftless region. They didn't advance and recede, and leaving drift, which is a certain geologic stuff, different kinds of rocks and stuff. So the way the land is down there is the way it's been for just millions of years, and I really admire that. I want to read a poem by Mark Conway, from his book, Rivers of the Driftless Region. It's called In Other Words. At the end of the year, the children were ground into December, only to be given a train and some dolls. God grew young. Smelted down, he reappeared in a cradle of straw, ready to be adored by a cow. We didn't care till we knew we'd been renewed for the new year. Given life, we ordered the same again and loved it insanely, again, enthralled with the views taped over our screens. We knew a fool who persists in his folly becomes angelically huge, able to lean in to hear the prophet whispering, "The world is a bridge. Pass over it, but build no houses on it. He who hopes for a day may hope for eternity." He told us that. We, who still hope for everything. I love these poems a lot. The only bad thing about Mark Conway, he always wants my 30-ton wood splitter. He says it's over at his house more than it is here. And that's fine. I bought all split wood this year because I don't have time with all this stuff to do. Okay. One more business note I almost forgot. We're going to have a quiz on Wednesday. all right? I notice that my views have been going down, and it's not hurtful. It's just, why would you watch the videos if I'm not going to hold you accountable once in a while? So we're going to have a quiz on Wednesday. Won't be long. I don't think it'll be too hard. And only people who watched this video before Wednesday will know about it. So get ready for that. Just be a little multiple choice thing. Just carve out, 15 minutes or so, not even that. And we've got to get a few quizzes up, right? It's school. So I spent the morning talking with my Comp 1 students, at least my 9 and my 10 o'clock tribes, as I call them, though I'm no chieftain. I asked them a dead simple question. I said, what's an essay? Define it. No, they were really blinking. Ahead of time, I said, do you all know what an essay is? And they nodded, because they'd all written them. But then when I said, define it, an essay is blank, and I started specifically picking on people, they were blinking. They were struggling a little bit. And in both classes, because it's a Brainerd thing, I don't know if this is being taught down there, and Pequot Lake's up there too. Students apparently are given the analogy that an essay is like a hamburger. It's a hamburger metaphor. I've heard this before. I don't want to throw those teachers under a bus, but I don't quite get it, right? A hamburger, like the bun is the introductory paragraph, and everything in the middle, the cheese and the burger and the lettuce and whatever, is the burger, and then there's another bun. We all know that buns that you get out of a store, unless they're whole wheat, they're just nutritionally useless. A bun is simply a delivery system for a brat or a burger that you grilled out on your lawn. So I don't quite get this. It seems to downgrade the importance of the introduction and the conclusion, and I've got some things to say about those. I admitted all day long that I'm mad at France, man. France, I'm grumpy about France, and today I think I'll keep pretty quiet about it. It has to do with the Enlightenment, which resulted in many thousands of people being brutally killed in northern France, and France has been going downhill ever since. I'll cover that more another day when I complain about how far we're taking rationality here in modernity. But let me try to say something nice about France. French people. They pretty much invented the essay. Jorge Luis Borges says that no one is the literary atom. In other words, nobody invents a literary form. That's not quite true. We pretty much have to credit the French with it. And we don't have to get fancy, okay? We don't. To me, an essay, the French were the first to decide, hey, why don't I sit down at this desk and write for a little while? And when I get done writing, I'm going to publish it. I'll put it on in a gazetteer or a pamphlet or a newspaper, or maybe I'll hang it on a church wall like Martin Luther, or a church door like Martin Luther King did Martin Luther, sorry, I got to slow down, had some coffee, like Martin Luther did on October 31st in 1517. Let's write something short and publish it to represent thinking, perhaps an argument. And I'm going to give you, again, about 12 days to come up with a persuasive paper. You're going to have to make a claim, and you're going to have to back it up. And for the remaining, I got 17 minutes here, if I can bring this in under 30. For the remaining time today, I want to illustrate something with a story, and something conceptually that's absolutely crucial. I know more than the average bear about argumentation, about persuasion. And I very rarely encounter a student that is not interested in being more persuasive, more adept at being argumentative, influential. We all need to at least be able to try to make another's thoughts tally with ours. And it's no truer in this country than when we have an election, as we are right now, and I'm not going there, like I already told you. So the principal thing I want to put before you before I tell you the story, and we'll talk about thesis statements, etc. Some of the basic stuff on Wednesday, stuff you already know. Aristotle, this is basic. Aristotle argued in his Rhetoric, I think book 3, that when you're arguing, when you're making an argument, you should only argue the essential facts of any case. Only the essential facts. But then, in the next sentence, he just tosses off another one, just with a single idea, and he says something along the lines, he kind of shrugs his Aristotelian shoulders and says, well, once in a while, you might need to argue something non-essential. Here's the thing. Arguing the essential matters the essential facts of any case is crucial. It is also crucial to be able to understand the temptation of using what are called non-essentials, which can be neutral or gray, as I'll prove with Wednesday's class, or they can be absolutely destructive. They can take the form of sleight of hand fallacies to distract whoever it is you're arguing with. And you got to watch it. You have got to be careful. And the story is basically this. When I was 18, I learned a really important lesson about rhetoric, even though the word rhetoric was never put before me. You don't have to study rhetoric to be persuasive and act in the world. I think it's very useful to understand what we're doing when we behave symbolically, and with language especially. But you don't necessarily need any special training with it. And to quickly cut to it, when I was 18 years old, I had an experience as a writer that was formative. I'm really interested, like William Faulkner, in the formative experiences that young people have. And it's an experience that really marked me. It had to do with being the editorial editor, the opinion editor of a very large high school newspaper, Anoka Senior High's Anoka High, which is what it's still called. To this minute, Anoka Senior High, where I graduated from in 1978, is one of the largest high schools in the state of Minnesota. And it was the largest the year I graduated. It was almost 800 kids, 781 kids in my graduating class. I didn't know half of them the night we stood on that football field. And that year, January of that year that I graduated from high school to take up the English major life, a couple kids streaked a basketball game in my hometown. Actually, 3 of them, but I was only friends with 2 of them. Now, earlier today I got a student from Mexico named Javi Anderson Mendoza, and I had to make sure that he understood what the word streaking meant. I also wanted to know what the Spanish word for it was. And I always had to explain this to Austrians year after year, and they would go, oh yeah, flitzig. Flitzig is the German word for streaking. So basically what happened is they planned it out 25 below that night. They wanted to do it during a basketball game between Anoka and Blaine. And because they wanted to run across the court diagonally, corner to corner, when the court was free of the melee and the chaos of the game, they wanted to make sure that they streaked the game during a free throw. So what they did is, during the school day, they went out, and the long curtain comes down, right, to make sure that the basketballs don't go off in the field house into the darkness. And they basically took a big pen and they punched a little hole through this gigantic fabric curtain. And they punched that hole so that night, when they came out in their uniform, the ski masks and the shoes, they could peek through that hole and bide their time in the darkness. So the big moment came, and I'm at a Ted Nugent concert, by the way. Every kid in the school knew this was going to happen, but I didn't. I went to a concert instead. And they did it, okay? Mike Harstead, my friend, was on the free throw line shooting a free throw, and they bolt, right? Again, it's 25 below, and they've got to get across a basketball court in front of 2,500 people. And not only that, they've got to get up 2 long flights of stairs, and at the top of the stairs, then through 2 sets of double doors that they should have had wedged open, but they didn't think that through, did they? And so when they do it, you know how it is, or it was anyway. Streaking's just so stupid to me, but we liked it in the 70s. And they run, and the crowd goes wild, standing ovation, chaos, right? But I'll tell you, there was an administrator there named David Gross, who later became the principal of Blaine. He was up on the pavilion looking down at the game, probably waiting. And he had, shiny shoes and a suit with tassels on his shoes. So when they bolt, he starts running. He starts running to catch them at the door. They got ahead of him. They got up the stairs. They got to the door. And 2 of the 3 boys got out. But Danny Sherman was the last out, and Groth got him, right? He shoestring tackled him on the icy sidewalk. And it was excuse me, it was horrible. And another friend of mine, I kind of lost track of him, Mike Marcotte, gets to the getaway car and turns around and sees Danny down, right? I'm sorry, Adam Wilder, you've heard this story before, I think. And he runs back, and he does something that he should not have done. He punches Mr. Growth in the head. Punches him twice. Punches him, breaks his glasses, punches him again, bloodies his nose. But Growth was not letting go of Danny. Not at all. And, of course, the getaway car, they ran away like the cowards they were, and they bring Danny in, and Growth was so mad with the blood coming out of his nose that he put his suit coat around Danny, and crowd gathering, like, who's the kid? Who did it? And they demasked him, man. And the whole town basically went, what? Danny Sherman, president of the National Honor Society, captain of the gymnastics team, future PhD in physics? How can this possibly be? An A kid, as I call him. Well, it's often that kid. It's often spring senior. You got to watch. If senioritis will kill you dead, watch out for it. It's always that great kid that's going to do something wrong. It's not the criminal kid. It's a great kid, a good kid. So you can imagine what happened next, right? Very strict school. They were suspended. They were kicked out of school for 2 weeks. They were stripped of every honor possible. They were kicked off every team, every club. They all three were in National Honor Society. And on top of that, the school filed criminal charges against them. It's one of my favorite stories because it demonstrates something. What they did, it was pretty public. Everyone knew. Yes, public indecency, disturbing the peace, assault and battery. Those three things happened. And this is where I enter the story, right? They're in big trouble. The town is scandalized. And all my friends are like, you got to write something about this. You got to write something about this. No, we can't do it interactively during YouTube, but today, I was making some kids really scratch their heads. I'm like, okay, remember, Aristotle defined rhetoric as the art of discovering in any case, the available means of persuasion. You'll need to remember that for the quiz too. So I asked my students today, my little screen, Zoom squares, okay, you guys, imagine you're me. It's 1978. Your friends are in trouble, and your other friends are demanding that you do something. Well, how do you defend what they did? Again, Aristotle said, argue only the essential facts of any case. What are the essential facts? They streaked a game, punched an administrator, and were publicly nude. Okay, that's a scandal. And I asked my students, and they were really scratching their head. What do you do? What would you do? What can you use? That's what every rhetorician needs as a central question. What can I use right now? Essential or non-essential? And again, they didn't come up with much. So I told them what I did. And here's what I did. At the beginning of the essay, and it's up in the attic. I've never been so close to it as I talk about this. Usually I'm up in Brainerd, imagining it in the attic and wishing that I had brought it. And I could have gone up and showed it to you. And it has an embarrassing title. I called it Streakers, : The Bare Facts. Go ahead, roll your eyes. But I admitted, okay, we can't get around what's essential. They did that. But then I started thinking, sitting at a manual typewriter in my childhood bedroom in a house that's no longer in our family, with our family. We moved my mama out of there a couple years ago. I thought, okay, what am I going to do? Okay, here's the argument. The argument is, while they did this, we're taking it too far as a town and as a school. And in the middle of the essay, I just had this little turn, okay? And the turn was all about, okay, yeah, they did it, but you guys, they're boys. They're kids. Kids are impulsive. We do things that we regret. And we always printed like 3,000 copies for the school and another 3,000 copies for the town. So this is audience consideration wise, this is a complicated audience. I'm arguing to kids, but I'm also talking to parents, community members. I know what I'm doing too. Even though I'm 18, I have no rhetorical training whatsoever. And my main argument was, yes, there should be consequences, but maybe these consequences are too heavy. And another of my questions was, is it possible that we're going to ruin their lives over this? And I think the sentence I think I'm most proud of, I still use this on kids now that I'm a grown-up. I said, are we going to punish these future men for something that they did as boys? Are we going to keep them out of college? Are we going to make sure that they can't go to a university? Really? Really? Just because they streaked a game? Okay, how am I doing? So far, pretty good, right? Well, then I just had to mess around, didn't I? I decided to pull the trigger on a non-essential, even though I didn't know what a non-essential was. And I got near the end of the essay, and I did something that was a completely unnecessary act. Possibly thinking that Kathleen Jorison, who's on my Facebook now, she's a PhD. We're still friends. She was my young English teacher back then. Maybe I had the idea that she would yank it when she let the whole thing fly. And near the end of the essay, I asked another question. I said, I believe that as a community, something along these lines, as a community, we should ask ourselves one essential question. Colon. I told you gotta watch it with the colon. What possessed Mr. Growth to chase these 3 naked boys into that dark, cold night? Put a period on that, submitted it, and holy cow, was there trouble. Because what did I do? I did something unnecessary. That's a non-essential, man. What the heck was I thinking? Well, maybe I wanted this story someday. There's a little button on the control panel, right? It's called homophobia, and I punched that button. I punched the homophobic button on a small town, through the control panel, through the floor, and just blew up a school, which is something I told you I'm already good at. I've always been good at it. Well, you can just imagine where this went. But again, why is it a formative lesson? Because I'm learning. My kid brain is learning that those who can write well can wield a kind of power. And maybe that did me harm. To be standing in a cafeteria with tons of kids buying this newspaper for a dime and laughing over it and patting me on the back and high-fiving me in the hallway. And that was awesome, man. Maybe, I don't know if that did me harm or what, but it basically was, again, an early formative lesson on, where I basically said, you know what, I can write better than the average bear. I should probably take up a life in English, in writing and in literature. Well, the good news was that I got all these pats on the back, but oh my gosh, was it their trouble. I got out of my blue Toyota Corolla 1 or 2 days later, and Mr. Growth's daughter was yelling at me in the parking lot, screaming at me, weeping, like bawling, really upset, screaming, my father's not a homosexual. I said, I know, but I was being satirical, and satire is protected speech, even when the audience doesn't get it. Oh my gosh, I ended up in the principal's office, Arthur C. Dussel yelling at me, asking me questions like, hey, what kind of journalist are you? You admit that you weren't even at the event and yet you're writing about it? I said, this is an opinion essay, number one, this isn't news. And by the way, the whole town knew about it, and on top of that, I've got photographs. Because we'd sent a photographer, right? We took pictures, photographs of the whole thing. One of them is hanging above Mike Marcotte's pool table in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. He's a Chinese translator right now. Well, then they wanted the photographs, right? Because they wanted to use them as evidence. And I got pulled out of physics 2 o'clock in the afternoon. 2 deputies from Anoka Police Department pulled me out of physics, took me down the hallway, opened up the code and said, all right, where are the pictures? I was nervous. I'd already hidden the pictures in Joe Nienfear's locker. So it's an old war story. I don't need to tell you any more of the details, but it ended up as a case in Hennepin County Court. And I got actually a defense from the Quill and Scroll Society, a free lawyer, who was able to determine that as a junior journalist, I had the right to those photographs. Okay, long story. It's fun to tell. It's fun to hear. It's made people smile for years. But the rhetoric of it is, I did something destructive with language. I should not have done that. Now, when we reconvene on Wednesday, I'm going to put before you a video that's about me also using a non-essential, but that one ethically is a little more gray, man. And I use that one further in the future in the building of this cute little house that I'm living in right now. I got in a little trouble for trying to build a house without a building permit. That story can keep until Wednesday. I got 40 seconds to go. I saw Mr. Growth years later at my dad's funeral. He came up behind me and put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, Jeff, and I was wild with grief, and sometimes at funerals I say and do inappropriate things, and I spun around. It was like, Mr. Growth. I was so surprised to see him. It was just like a wrinkly version of him, older, right? And I blurted out, I can't believe you're alive. Well, he was probably 40 or something when this happened, and he was probably 70 at my dad's funeral. He looked great, and he was there because my dad was a small-town politician. And I said to him, I owed you an apology for a long time. I tore